Mombasa. Mombasa MCAs tafadhali wasimame. Haya, governor atafanya wa Mombasa. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. In the interest of time, I will...
Wa Mombasa, Harub Katri yuko hapa. Nilikuja na CC wangu na Chief of Staff, lakini kando na hao tuko na County Assembly members ambao walikuja hapa as an assembly team. There are almost 20 of them here. Zea yatakuwa ni mawili, na nina sababu kwa nini nitamalizia na hayo mawili. Kwanza, tuko hapa kuweza kusherehekea. Hapawezi kuwa na uhuru katika Kenya ikiwa kuna wengine bado wako ndani, akiwemo ni Kenyatta. Walipochukua nchi akawa naibu wa rais, kwa sana nchi inavyokwenda havilingani na yeye. Mimi ni bora niweze kujiuzulu, lakini niweke heshima yangu na heshima. Hakuweza kusita kupeana nasaha na kama Young Turks, wala hakushika wale ambao kwamba ni Wajaluo peke yake, ambao kwamba ni chipukizi. Sasa Martin Shikuku na wengine wengi, Gitobu Imanyara, wengi. Sasa hizi sifa za uongozi za kuweka matakwa yake nyuma, akaweka matakwa ya Kenya mbele. Mtu aloweza akasema ya kwa mimi najiuzulu, sikubaliani. Mtu ambaye hakuweza kuogopa kwa vijana ambao kwamba walioko chipukizi kusherekewa. Ndio nikasema Your Excellency, ili ambao nitaweza kuyataja ya familia. La pili, nitaomba ruhusa ya familia ya Jaramogi. La kwanza, Your Excellency, kutoka hapa kama gavana wa Mombasa naelezea na natoa amri, kuna barabara katika kaunti ya iwe katika kumbukumbu ya historia. La pili, Your Excellency, hili nitaomba ruhusa ya familia waweze kukubali. Jaramogi alikuwa si kiongozi wa Wajaluo, alikuwa Kenya nzima. Ikiwa leo tuko hapa kumbukumbu ya miaka 30, mwaka wa 31 kwa niaba ya watu wa Mombasa na watu wa Kenya, hizi mutupe nafasi kama kaunti ya Mombasa tuweze kuziweka, ili mwaka wa 32 nina imani ya kwa kaunti zote 47 ya huyu ambaye kwa nzima alikuwa ni baba wa demokrasia na alileta yale mengi, na tusipoweza kuwajulisha ni huu mfumo ambao kwamba sasa hivi tuko nao, ya kwa yale ya kwanza ya mambo ya majimbo. Leo tuko na serikali za kaunti. kwa sababu ya mkunjufu nitaomba si kukosa heshima, lakini kwa sababu ya hali kuelekea, na nina imani tutakuwa pamoja wiki nzima hii. Asanteni sana, na kama wanavyosema kwangu mimi
asante sana. Thank you very much. Thank you for the good advice. The next session of the people speaking us on Zoom, Moses Kuria, Waziri Moses Kuria, and at least say one or two things. I welcome you to Kisumu, and I'm not going to let you go back to Nairobi today.
Ya Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Baba Raila Amolo Odinga, ndugu yangu Oburu Odinga, Mama Aida Odinga, Mama Margaret Kenyatta, na watu wa Kisumu, na dhura umor kusherekea hii sherehe ya miaka 30 for one of my early mentors when I member as a student leader in the University of Nairobi. And I remember we were accompanied tulipelekwa kwa chairman wetu wakati huo, pia tulikuwa Governor Ochilo yako, who is here. Moi alikuwa amekataa kuregister Jaramogi. Tulipoenda kumuona akatusukuma kuwa registered. I remember one time TJ Kajwang and myself went to see the then Attorney General. Amos Wako told me, young man, I understand your position. So Amos Wako, I don't know whether he's still around. He was trying to convince us, just accept to be expelled. Mkubali tu. Wakati tulifukuzwa kutoka university, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga mtu anaitwa Gerard Otieno Kajwang, na akamuamulisha at 6 p.m. And that's how I managed to finish my university. Kabisa. Later, I remember we went to Bondo to bury Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. And I remember James Olengo almost took over. Of Mark Anthony. 1 year later, and Moi said that there is not going to be live music. Nakumbuka DC wakati huo alikuwa anaitwa Kirito wa. Nakumbuka tukipitia pahali kuna cactus in a very small hole. So they have a legend, and to celebrate be taken away. The challenge we have as we honor Jaramogi today that can make a difference. I believe and relaunch the has lived. It may not be from a monolithic thinking as it was when Jaramogi political party, but we can have an agreement on things that agree on a set of ideals. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga in eternal peace. Asante sana.
Now we are going to have presentations from abroad from 4 scholars in Great Britain and the US who have studied Kenya very well in politics and economics. So I'm going to request them to take 5 minutes each. I hope the electronics is ready. University. He will be followed by Professor John Lonsdale of Cambridge University, and then our brother John Kamau, who is currently doing his postgraduate studies and in Toronto, because the papers well researched and from archive of West Virginia University. So first, let me request Professor to come on, please. Please listen to him very carefully. Sir David Throop addresses you for 5 minutes.
Gentlemen, when he was
Vous vivez à l'entrée de la Cour constitutionnelle.
Into 6 phases. First, the casino, the Alliance High School, Messina. And that period demonstrated, and challenge authority in 2 famous pupil at Messina, and then just before Carrie Fry High School. The second period is, I think, extremely important and until he was elected to the Legislative Council in 1957. Chianganeko, the Luo Union, and played a pivotal role in the Thrift and Trading Corporation. And it was to 1957 that he really over the Luo community. First of the Luo representing the voice of the have-nots of Kisumu as the spokesman of the Luo critique of soil conservation measures and lipping, I think, in the 1940s and 1950s, catapulted him into the position of Gur and leader of the Luo community, a position that in many respects he was to hold until his death in 1990. One that we all know about, but which I'm going to talk about perhaps in a little more detail, echoing of the struggle for KANU. To the Legislative Council in President of KANU and Vice President of Kenya to form the Kenya People's Union. 1958, as has been mentioned, is a pivotal year, pivotal speech, when he says, and that the rest of us sitting here in the Legislative Council are really merely his representatives. And Kenyatta has to be released to play his rightful role in. But that relationship became 1964. It was already evident at the time of the AR that Kenyatta of Oginga, of the Jaramogi. And that, at the end of the year, on Jamhuri Day, December 1964, incorporated into KANU in the ruling party. The 12th of December 19, when Oginga Odinga to open the Lumumba Institute, which was to be, and in May 1965, on the graduation, made the mistake, a fatal mistake, I think, looking back, to seize control of KANU headquarters, to had all been dismissed, and to usher in a left-wing platform. That end of Jaramogi's personal relationship with President Kenyatta. At the same time, of course, you have the rumors and supplies being shadowed by the Royal Navy. Of course, it arrived first in Dar es Salaam. If there were any weapons, they made its way into Mombasa, where it was quarantined. It was searched. Government ministers were searched. That was the final blow. And of sessional paper African socialism, and it being quite Kenya represented African socialism and the Arusha Declaration was much more friendly to capitalism. It marked, if you like, the culmination of the Jaramogi standing inside the inner circle. That I want to refer to what Michael Chegi said, and I want to talk in particular about the information research section, the special editorial unit, which in these crucial years, 4 black operations, of which in September 1965, revolution document in Kenya in the Daily Telegraph, which had Africa, and which alleged that Jaramogi was to be brought to Socialist Party. This story was completely concocted. Sent out 80 copies, which he'd hoped would be press. And which wanted to get back at Jaramogi for expelling their fabrications, other pieces of what we would. He was a tool of the Chinese, and so on. The story of British propaganda operations in the days of the declining empire were not as much pomp and circumstance, disinformation, and to continue to exert control over a former. Jaramogi was the great victim. The fourth, fifth, and sixth phases, I worked PU phase, 1960. Detention and house arrest, 1982, 2 decades really as wilderness. If Ford had not split, if won, they already had 63 election. If you combine Matiba and Jaramogi, 2% compared to the 36% by Daniel Arap Moi, but in all rigged even more, there would have been. Giving you a thought. If the Jaramogi and Ford had won, and Jaramogi had become Kenya's third president, Matiba would have succeeded to the presidency today.
Okay, thank you so much, David.
Would have been very different.
The subsequent speakers to hold on to the 5 minutes limit, we shall papers, even the ones that have been given here today, so that we can have Jaramogi. I know we have a lot to say, but it is now 5 o'clock in the afternoon, evening in Kenyan time, and we still have one more panel to go through for the remaining speakers. My friend John Lonsdale to come in. And then you can send.
Very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm very grateful indeed to have been asked to
Send us your
and also greatly honoured, and I'm delighted. Contributors. I will speak very briefly. My former student, David Throop, is not known for his conciseness. I shall be very much more concise than him. About Odinga's rootedness. Time ago, when I was a research Odinga, as others were campaigning, he was very busy, he swept by, I managed to say hello, and that was about it. But the point I want to make is that the person I found most interesting to talk to around Kisumu in 1960, Alola. And John Paul Alola was the farmer at what used to be called the native farm at Kibos. He was, I think, Odinga's business mentor in founding the Luo Thrift and Trading Corporation and the bus company. So that Odinga grew up, I think, in an atmosphere of extraordinary intellectual depth and interest, surrounded by people like John Paul Alola, a generation older than him. And I think that Alola, I mean, he showed me cuttings he had made of the East African Standard in the 1920s. He kept up with settler politics. He showed me letters that he had written as an agricultural instructor in, I think, 1914, complaining to the district commissioner that the Luo chiefs were not planting the kind of seeds that he was recommending. Odinga, the child of great people. And I think that if we really want to understand him, then we need to understand a great deal more and record a great deal more about how the Luo themselves responded in such an extraordinarily creative way to the challenges of colonial rule. I want people like John Paul Alola to be remembered as much as Odinga. With that, I will hand it back to other people who remember very much more about Odinga than I do, a man I have always admired. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, John. Very much like you, concise and to the point. Please say hello to your colleagues in Cambridge. But currently is doing postgraduate work in Toronto. John, please, can you come on?
Thank you. I hope you can hear me all.
Yeah, we can hear you.
And I'm very happy for the Odinga family for organizing this panel. I'll be quite quick. Jaramogi, and one thing that I always say is that we need to understand Jaramogi within the wider framework of international Black thinkers, the intellectuals, and the activists who are emerging to question the legitimacy. And the perception of Blacks as backward. And he was in the league of great visionaries like Kwame Nkrumah, Kenyatta, all people who are against. I try to look at him from that international perspective, because the kind of he was engaging in fighting. And if you listen, you're going to see that this is not the story of Kenya alone. It is a story of unfinished business of liberation. Having been born at a time when the sun was never setting on the empire, I think he took it as his duty to make sure that by the time of his death, the sun will have set on the empire. But also, the empire also struck back, and Professor David Throop has talked about the kind of response in which what the empire did. And those who look at the propaganda system and the way it worked with the British intelligence, I think having failed to create Jaramogi to become a loyalist or to become in their own image, to create a man in their own image, they turned against him, and they made sure that they turned against him, and they made sure that the only thing that they could do was to satanize Odinga, the way they satanized everybody else who was against the empire. And to do this, I think we need to reflect so much on the works of the Information Research Department and their data campaigns in Africa and in other places. What worries me is that we fell into this trap of this misinformation. And even up to this moment, we are still trapped into some of the politics of this misinformation and the Black propaganda, which was started by inward, to an extent that a great nation like modification would think about the politics of genital modification as one of the. And this, I find that to be quite absurd for a great nation like Kenya. And again, when you look at the workings of the Black propaganda, of what Jim Barnes on one of the MI5, MI6 personnel who was working in Nairobi. His name was Walter Bell. And this book, which was released, Bell started working with Jomo Kenyatta. Kenyatta didn't know so much propaganda. And Walter Bell worked so much with Kenyatta. And part of the misinformation about the coup, Odinga coup and all that, it reaches Kenyatta's desk. And even the papers by the People's Revolutionary Kenya Socialist Party, most of these propaganda papers, they reach Kenyatta. And he started being suspicious of Odinga. And so a wedge is being created through this machinery. The other thing which we fail sometimes to remember is that Odinga is an internationalist. He had set up what was known as the Kenya office in Cairo. And few people recall the Kenya office in Cairo. And this is where he was reaching out to international figures like Abdel Nasser for help in the Kenya's liberation. And we had people like Odhiambo Okello, Owera Abido, Abdullah Karungo, Kamwithi Munyi. All these people who were working towards emancipating the Black Africa. And they were with the help of Abdel Nasser. So we find that Jaramogi was a deliberate internationalist. Deliberate in that he was reaching. And that is why you find his friends included Tito of Yugoslavia, Mao, Khrushchev, all these people, if you read these. And the other thing which I want to touch quite briefly about it is about the Jaramogi airlifts. When we talk about airlifts, people are always talking about the US airlifts.
Okay, thank you so much, John.
Okay, thank you so much.
There's an announcement to be made here, please. Can you make a quick announcement?
Thank you, Prof. I wish to remind that we are here on a very important intellectual discourse. Must stop. Madam, you cannot be selling calendars. Officials, people are seated behind you for a good reason. You can't be standing. God has given us a sound mind. And kindly, Calvo. Okay. Na wewe mzee uliyesimama mbele ya kamera. Tusikilize maswala yanayozungumziwa hapa. Professor.
Thank you very much. We have the last speaker on Zoom, Professor Robert Mason of West Virginia. And I'm requesting Robert to observe the 5-minute rule because we have our last panel years to come and it's already 5:10. Thank you very much, Bob.
Advice. Starting just by recalling the times that yes.
Can you go out or keep quiet and sit down, please? Please. Tafadhali. Okay, John, Robert, please.
Thank you. A speech he gave in a mural program with have courses in Western Kenya, and he shared the platform with Musa Amalemba. And this is the first time I've seen Amalemba in their public speaking and dress and their message. Education of Kenyans was quite a stark contrast. I've never forgotten it. education that reflects the people of Kenya, that is education completely but African. Second time I met him was at a friendly soccer match that he based on colonial education completely but African. At a friendly soccer match that was arranged between North Nyanza and Central Nyanza to welcome Kenyatta and Odinga to Western Kenya. I had the opportunity to shake hands with him then. But thirdly, when I carry out dissertation research, I was really looking for a place to stay. We need English where the police in obvious and less obvious get threatened to be taken to the central police station for going into the building where KPU was. Would follow up on what Professor David talked about, the 1958 statement in Mexico. As the leader of the Kenya's Africans to 1959, he made that case directly in the face of briefed before this meeting. Odinga was leading a delegation from Asian members of LegCo. That's those in Kenya who were glorifying Kenyatta, as they briefly put it. He did immediately to defend Kenyatta as a leader of Africans, called for his release, and of course infuriated Lennox Boyd, but the die had been cast a few days earlier. He had announced in Parliament that there would be a constitutional First Lancaster House Conference.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Robert, and thank you, David. Thank you, Professor Lonsdale. Thank you, John Kamau. Still stay tuned because we are doing the last part turning up for this occasion. We now have the last panel. Entered. Governor James Orengo will take the last seat because he last seat. Gitu Kaengeri, Archbishop Okoth will come to the second. Bogo, will she speak from there? Governor, Archbishop, you can start.
Moment of listening to the lectures. Kindly go to the tent.
Yes, yes, yes.
Bura binyi kairi. Adwan mondo odhi tent kacha. Kaburu moni. Kaburu. Unye maber. Unye. Abiro ko.
And we will start. Who was inspired by Jaramogi? 5 minutes. I love Archbishop now.
Mine is to state one attribute of Jaramogi, which we say Jaramogi was a man of giving thanks. Jaramogi not going to say erokamano. Pero jabiskop ka. Jaramogi with that.
Yes.
Jaramogi been outing or Koyambo with that. One Jaramogi no kwa rose a public. Mwenye kane waro. Mokuongo anyisu. Kaka Jaramogi no iko Kenyatta
Yes.
ne antiere. Kendo ne antie kanyo kajo biskop mara. Rielwedi kuo muse Kenyatta. When Jaramogi was passing, he was Raila Wacho. Chame mari imodo gigi. And my hands were straight over Muse Kenyatta. Man Jaramogi Wacho toka. Now I experiences. Jaramogi no kono Nyasaye erokamano. Mae to kada wacho mang'eny abiro wacho matin. Wacho matin. Jakom Mama ida to ng'eyo. Onge gima lando. An mawacho ne Chakos. Akete mdoka moromo. Ola. Kuna modhi yo loka koje. Erokamano. Nyasaye ogwedhowa. Mano wan gi Jaramogi. Koro wacho gik mane ok owacho. Gratitude to God. Can I reach a tech? Jaramogi. Sunset Hotel, okay hotel. Stairs. To Waberi Kurosa, Aria de Cotier, Naka Sao Chair. Around that section 2A. Marco Nebangan Wayoda. Jaramogi was a man of God. of political affairs. He was also a fighter for Mabedo Karawaki Mange, Kanogi Kamakoro, Sayano Kenalia Komorane, Kaoni Kwai, they learned in Nairobi School. James Orengonika knows very well. Used to take the fees of these grandchildren of Jaramogi. Consolata School. They go to school. That is all. Jaramogi came to Nyakane Wajwange Jaramogi. Nenamanya Sayogwe. God has blessed us. Let us thank God. Kanegi Kamakoro. And he was there. Jaramogi was there. Motingo Kenya te. Kelwapi. Gimat isitima bondo. Deno. E kakanege. Zaino mi aria komoromati. Avia pinjo Brussels. Bene. Achobo kanyo ero. Nyakolago. The Mambolo electricity going to Bondo is a responsibility to do that on the request. You can watch over Bondo. Wadi Nyangoma, Nyakolago. At Olago itself, a Jewish water engineer. Jaramogi used to come there every day almost. Ero Kaman. No negoteri. Nyako duok Nyangoma back to Bondo Keroko Chico Imbo. Distribution tanks had the people. Allow the bishop. Let's get a tractor to make a road to the hill, top of Sarafongo Hill. Back Kochiko Imbo, back Kadugo Nango Kon. Jaramogi comes and says, some of Sakanyo, Wagona Yasairo Kaman. Jaramogi Nentiere, Mabene again, Jalango Polytechnic. Magarama Dungene, Jaramogi was a man of gratitude. He was a political fighter for truth and justice. But where there was no justice, Jaramogi did not hide from me. We did not meet where people meet us. We met in our own small ways, here and there. Sometimes with the Andrew Kulu, think about this and that. But Jaramogi was always a man of gratitude. Let us not go away saying he was only a fighter for, no. He was a fighter for truth and justice and peace. That's what he was. Kanogi Kamoro. Jaramogi Chako. Biro ira kwana ero Kamoro. Nilo maido kuro angoma timorene. To Kanogi kanyo ero. Mane koro idhiko Masime. Yana mnaike. Jaramogi was not allowed to speak. He was not allowed to speak. Tani mana ane vialtar. Sama kurasa momisa ane komanda. Anaji yeru kaman. Mwaka niya sawa gwedro. Mono SM utiru. Odhio ikinyara gunga. Note pap moro tuku koja. Jaramogi no kona yeru kaman. No goni nyasa yeru kaman. Magi agik mwaka mwadwangene ya. Ngema Jaramogi. We also gratitude and we thank God because Sayo gwedhi, sayo erukamano.
Thank you very much, Archbishop. Indeed, the fourth, because Jaramogi was for truth and justice. Next is Jael Mbogo. Phoebe Asio records in her autobiography that you and her tried to persuade Jaramogi not to resign as vice president.
I hope you will excuse me to speak in English a little and mix it where necessary with my mother tongue. My name is Jael Ogombe Mbogo. And all protocols observed. I come to you today to confirm that that I am one of the products of Jaramogi's mentorship. I was with 1958, which was then known as the natives area. After the death, who were blacks. And that is where we started with Mzee. He was in Ofafa Jericho. I was in Ofafa Maringo F-17. We were 6 of us. 5 Africans and 1 Asian, T.S. Nyanandra. In the city council, under the who was a European. I was also at the same time department. And during the course of my work, there was a lot of the time when Africans and fighting hard involved in many ways because of my skills and service. You cannot it is service before self. In those days, and particularly in expect anybody to do anything. And those who wanted back their land, there was agreement for the British to send money to settle the ex-detainees who are being released at that time. When Mzee wrote about Not Yet Uhuru, he had noticed that the money that was coming to compensate the detainees who are being released never reached them at any cost. Instead, there was a company, Kikuyu Land Buying Company, which was charged with raising money to buy land from the Wazungus. But even that did not work properly. Therefore, he was very disappointed. When he saw this, and he found out that he could not get his points considered, that's the time he resigned and formed the party, KPU. I wanted to join the party then because he was our leader from Eastlands. Every morning we would be controlled 3-4 times from Ofafa to City Hall. You lie down, you stretch your legs, and you open your mouth. If you have no teeth down here, you get relief. But if you have your teeth, the lower teeth, you are getting in. I was arrested many times because I refused to remove my lower teeth when my time came. Mondonaga, I had to pay the penalty. Marbe dogila kena. Tokoro sani agon nyasairo kamano. Nikechela kena go koro wuok kendgi. Mondo ka dhi e polo, tayudu kuma jaduong' nitiere. E kona ma jolue mabro dhi e polo. Mano en adiera. Yeah, after that, we moved to the real independence now. We worked very hard. I was given a role to play as a councillor to organize the African community in Nairobi, and particularly women. We hired Kenya Polytechnic, a big hall like this for the whole country, and everyone came with whatever they could show as being attributed to the African culture. This went person or president of Maendeleo Yanawake. And in this area now, I had very good opportunity of what from main the but much more after everything happened, Mzee, I would say, he was very particular. He formed within the party, and this he did not. Come 1991-92, during the formation of Ford Kenya, or Ford Original, he called me personally and asked me to go to the office because he wanted to assign some duties to me. When I to head the Department of Women in the party. And I want you to go out and bring as many with them, you know them, you understand them, and I want them to be the springboard of our struggle in Ford, Kenya, at Ajip House. I did exactly that. The first person I called was Wamboi Otieno. I want female. Was over to Ford, Kenya. And I brought many other women. Wangare was vice chairman. But when we went for elections, Wangare stood and stepped down, and that is how Mwite came on board, with Wamalwa as second vice chairman. I have worked with Mzee in many areas. When he was of the organization. I'm the one who typed the document he went to present in a OAU body. But many other documents, he entrusted them to me because I could not let him down. Working with there was very simple, and he will not hurry in answering you. He will. You go, I'll call you. And that made it possible for each and every one of us to reach him easily. I don't mean that he was a simple person, but the way he related to us, peaceful, very well coordinated, consult us as young people, as small people in the office. He will say, I want you to come to the hall to hear the speech I'm going to read. And if you feel anything is missing, please feel free to contribute and do it. So I want just to affirm that Mzee mentored me in many ways. He gave me ideas. Must have and one on the right. You must divide it into 3 portions. So if you feel you can deal with it right away, put it on your left-hand side. If you feel you want to have it the next day, store it on your right-hand side. But always keep your heart open that are coming. You should not block the flow of issues, whether they are challenging, whether they are good, whether they are bad. You must be ready to confront them. Are trying to accomplish. Myself being a student and mentored by Jaramogi, I am very grateful to God, and I want to thank you, the family of Yaduong, for what you have done to us up to this time. In my life, unless it is ODM. And
Thank you.
This is my mission to you. Before I finish, because I have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's just
if you
time.
give me just two minutes
1 minute,
more.
1 minute, 1 minute.
The work I have done in Kenya as a person was to make sure that the position of women is recognized. And that I have done throughout my life. I'm now a Moran of the Burning Spear, and the citation is my persistence in working for the in leadership, in economic field, in employment organizations and government. And I still want to continue doing that until my last. You see the number of women leaders. One of them, the most powerful one, is sitting there. Thank you very much. I respect you, and the sky is the limit. And I know you will be somewhere to show that leadership can be shared, and where leadership is shared, success is promised, is assured. And with those few remarks,
Thank you very much.
I want to say thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to come and participate with you and also contribute the little much I've had with the Mzee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The legs, as you can see, are failing, but the mind, you'll agree with me, is very clear, very sharp. Now we go to the youth. Gitu Kahengeri is now a century old, which means he's 100 years. He lived in the struggle of Mau Mau. That Jaramogi is one of heroes. Tell us why, Mzee Gitu. 5 minutes.
Mimi jina langu naitwa Kahengeri. Mimi ni freedom fighter. Nilikuwa katika vita na Waingereza kwa vita vya Mau Mau. Havikuwa vita vya Wakikuyu. Havikuwa vita vya Wajaluo. Havikuwa vita vya Wakalenjin. Vilikuwa vita vya watu wa Kenya. Na watu hawa wa Kenya ni kutoka Namanga mpaka Moyale. Na kutoka Indian Ocean mpaka Busia. Kwa hivyo hawa watu wote walikuwa freedom fighters. Kwa sababu wale walikwenda msituni, walikwenda kupigana ili nchi yetu iokoke kutoka utumwa. Wale waliokwenda kanisani waliomba Mau Mau ishinde, wazungu waende kwao nyumbani. Kwa hivyo sisi tunajua vita vya ukombozi vya Mau Mau ni vita vya watu wa Kenya. Nikimaliza hivyo, sasa nitasema natoa shukrani kubwa sana kwa mji wa Jaramogi Oginga Odinga kwa sababu wa kutengeneza mkutano kama huu na kuachilia sisi ambao tulifanya kazi na yeye kuambia kitu ambacho labda hawakujua. Ni shukrani nyingi sana. Nikimaliza hivyo, nataka kusema hivi. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga alikuwa rafiki wangu wa siasa na wa kibinafsi. Na vile vile alikuwa shujaa wangu. Na ni shujaa wangu akiwa amekufa na wakati alipokuwa hai. Kwa hivyo maneno nitakayotoa hapa, nitatoa maneno ya rafiki wangu aliyekufa na bado mpaka sasa mimi nashikilia ya kwamba sisi tuna urafiki pamoja. I want to remind you of some of the unforgettable ideals of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. Reminding you of what you already know is not a crime. Kwa hivyo mtaniwacha niendelee. Jaramogi is one of the architects of the unity of the people of Kenya, which culminated in the Mau Mau armed liberation struggle. He refused to bow to the wishes of colonialists of the colonial regime in condemnation of Jomo Kenyatta to die in prison. Jaramogi victoriously led political campaign of release Jomo Kenyatta from detention in Marela. Kenyatta was released and he became the President of the Republic of Kenya, with Jaramogi Oginga Odinga the Vice President. In his willingness and wisdom, Jaramogi successfully united KANU political members in Nyanza and in the central region to defeat KANU, a party that in the general election. KANU was supported by colonial regime. They are collaborators, they are traitors, and the notorious so-called home guards. Jaramogi firmly stood for justice and good governance. Jaramogi initiated for restoration of democracy, second revolution, supported by progressive young patriots like James Orengo, Mukisa Kitui, who are here, na Anyang Nyong'e, who I can see here today, and many others who deserve recognition. Jaramogi is a confirmed patriot, progressive leader of the people of Kenya. His ideals are worth remembering and emulation. Having reminded you that, I now appeal to the young generation together with their parents. Number 8, love and help one another for peace and progress. Number 2, unite the people of Kenya. Unity is strength. Number C, embrace dialogue for any kind of dispute. Dialogue is the mother of all agreements. Sacrifice for the development of this country. You are the pillars of this nation. Use your strength, similar to that of sledgehammer, to fight tribalism, corruption, nepotism, any other evils destructive to our nation. You have the capacity to do that. Amen.
Kahengeri, who stood with Jaramogi and the Odinga family. Doc, you are part of the Young Turks, and when you were invited, you said whatever was in your diary had to give way. Why?
I wanted working with Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and our time in the second liberation. But a lot of the strands have already been taken out. And in the interest of brevity, I'll just take two of the things I wanted to talk about. One is where Mzee Getu Gahengeri has just left off. Inspiring young people to invited us to his hotel room in Mombasa. Peter, you were there. Orengo, you were there. Gitobi Manyara was there. Paul Mwite was there. And one of the things that he said to us, the last conversation we had with him, he thanked us for making me happy about that. You even added me years without feeling youthful. And the second thing, he said, always fight on when we have not reached our goals. I find this important because some of the challenge I feel we are confronting today as a country is the inadequate experience of old, the energy of young, in confronting the continuing threat to our democracy. We must look afresh at how the bonds between generations to deal with major challenges which are threatening to reverse the gains that people like Jaramogi Oginga Odinga fought so much for, sacrificed themselves for. The second, which really builds into that first statement for me, is Jaramogi was a study in humility but with determination. He was not a very person, but he was a very consistent and persistent person. And working in these moments, I could see a person who was saying the cause is larger than ourselves. This is important to me today because I fear there aren't enough voices in this country talking truth. When there was not sufficient outrage in this country. When Jaswinda ran promising illegality, there was not enough outrage about that behavior. Humiliated, purportedly, we kept a similar silence. Jaramogi would not be so silent. The best way we can honor Jaramogi, speak truth to authority. We are not here by invitation. Our second liberation saw people sacrifice their lives. So people spend decades in detention. So families broken up. By power, intimidate us. And my friend, the leader of minority in parliament, the parliament of Kenya today is the most gullible since the Mulolongo parliament of the late 80s. That usually such terrible parliaments give way to liberation. Let us not make the sacrifices of silenced legislators without the linking our hands, seeing every struggle as a of Kenyans, sees every unjustifiable attack on the judiciary as attacks on our order. And that if we become complacent and look the other way, Jaramogi will sit uncomfortable in his grave.
But not least, those who read history know that he was not only a personal lawyer, he was a confidant. He was always there. He was an aide. And on the day he died, he was right there by his bedside. And Dr. Diambol Lel, whom you guys saw in the documentary, said in Luo, when Jaramogi breathed his last, Jim, Jaduongo Bwathna, which means, Jim, Mzee slipped through my hands. Your reflections, Governor.
Thank you. The Prime Minister, Raila Amolo Odinga and the Odinga family, Mama Susan and the family. If I was to talk about Jaramogi, it would take a long time. But let me say, on this day, at this hour, I was at the Aga Khan Hospital
I had come on a mission where Jaramogi had instructed me to write a letter to Nelson Mandela, which he wanted to be delivered. And he wanted a meeting between him and Nelson Mandela before Mandela became the president of South Africa. Jaramogi left us in January 1994, and Mandela became president in May 1994. So it is a day I never really want sometimes to think about, because I think history today would have been different. But I'm grateful to Olaro Tunu, because the things that you said about Jaramogi, I would not want to repeat them, but because Jaramogi left us with a legacy of struggle. And I think those virtues of Jaramogi are important for us today. The virtue of wisdom, the virtue of justice, and the virtue of courage. And more importantly, when we're talking about courage, is not sheer bravery. It's more than that. And for Jaramogi, it also meant the commitment to the truth. So I would feel happy if I could say in a few words what Jaramogi desired of us, those that he left behind. And I just want to read from his own book. And by the way, if you read Not Yet Uhuru, I want you to read the introduction by Jaramogi, read the preface by Kwame Nkrumah, and what I call a preamble and a dedication. These three parts of Jaramogi's book are very important, thinking about the struggle today. And this is what Jaramogi said in this seminal book about the time. And I quote, "When the political temperature," I may paraphrase in order to shorten, "when the political temperature was highest, the youth and the women were the greatest single force of our struggle and its nerve center. The women created the political consciousness," and I'm grateful what Jan Mbogo is saying. "The women created the political consciousness which sent the people to the polls, and it is they who voted to sweep our first independence government to power. The youth and women galvanized the people on whose support we rode to victory. They were never afraid of bullets, tear gas, or jail." And then in his dedication in this book, what does he say? And I quote, "I dedicate this book, the story of my life and political struggle, to the youth of Kenya, my country. As the spirit of the youth carried us through our hardest days in the fight for independence, so on the youth, the youth will shape our new country, Kenya." So, looking at the struggle from 1994, without the youth, I think we would not have been where we are today. Without the women, I don't think we would be where we are today. And I want to repeat that it is true that when there were meetings about the leadership of Ford, Jaramogi's preferred candidate was Wangari Maathai. And you remember to the end in the elections that came, Wangari Maathai still advocated for Jaramogi to become the third president of the Republic of Kenya. Now, when you talk about courage, I have never seen somebody of that age so courageous. I remember an incident that when we went to Garissa for a political meeting, and we carried all the political heavyweights to Garissa, including Martin Shikuku, Kimani Wanyoike, Dennis Akumu, Buya, and at the airport in Garissa, the military said we could not go through to go and hold a political meeting in Garissa. And when one of the people in Garissa offered a combi which found its way into the military, into the airport, some of us, whom I shall not mention, refused to enter that pickup. But Martin Shikuku was always very loud, sat at the back of the, of the combi. And Jaramogi, of all the people, sat on the front. And he ordered the driver to drive through the gate and the barrier that the military had put there. And we managed to pass through and get to Garissa town and held a meeting. And I remember Abuya crying that, oh, I've been hit by a stone. The damu inatoka kwa mkono yangu. And Jaramogi said, unataka itoke maji. We ended up having a very successful meeting on that day. The second thing, if you read the book between what Nkrumah says and what Jaramogi says, is that on issues of principles, we should be steadfast. We should steadfast. And he cries in that book that the independence government was taken over by people who did not believe in the struggle. And today in Kenya, and I'm sorry, my friend Korea is here, and you're my very good friend. If you look at Kenya today, part of the problem that we have today is that those who are in power were never part of the struggle. And in this, we face a lot of challenges, and we must rededicate the struggle in Kenya to make sure that the progressive movement attains what Jaramogi desired of us, and is never too late. And I thank Raila Amolo Odinga being steadfast in keeping this flame of freedom burning all the time. And I know it can be done. The other thing that I remember about Jaramogi, and this is the last point, I think we are tired and late. There's a time when, through Jobo Mino, he had organized for a meeting in London between him and Tiny Roland to ask for funds for the campaign. And Tiny Roland used to run a hotel in London with Mohammed Gaddafi. As soon as we got to that hotel, Jaramogi, instead of just asking for a contribution, he went straight and told Tiny Roland that you people have exploited Africa and you have nothing to show. And the worst is that Mozambique, Rhodesia, what is Zimbabwe now, and Zambia could have become independent countries if Londro, East Africa, had not engaged with the reactionary forces, particularly in Mozambique. Now, when Tiny Roland walked out, and I was trying to whisper to him, Jaduong, Koroki wacho motango yud pesa nenade. To owachana to kotamre okowe nyaka said here. So when Tiny Roland came back, he told him, I know you're Moi's friend. I will not stop you from giving him a contribution. But you must also give us a contribution because you know we are the ones who stand for the truth. And a testimony to that, when Jaramogi died, Tiny Roland was here, to say bye-bye to Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. So this is a life that is very difficult to replicate, but I think the legacy lives, and Kenya is in the right trajectory if we follow the footsteps of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Governor Orengo. I'll ask now the panelists, with the exception of Archbishop Okoth, to remain, and the rest can say it. Indeed, the political shadow of Jaramogi looms large from what we have seen today, from the talk we have had today, and from the aspirations that people still have. The program says that we should have the closing prayer, but I know you would stone me out of this podium if I went and said that Archbishop Okoth now give the closing prayer. And therefore, because of that, I want to invite the only one, the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, to come and wrap up what has been a momentous day. And therefore, let's be upstanding as he comes to give the closing and wrap up remarks. Karibu. Bye.
Hiya. You may be seated. I know you guys are now tired, but I am not going to make a speech. I just want first to thank those who have spared their time to come here and share their views about Jaramogi with us today. I want to thank our friend, Dr. Lara Otunu, who has come all the way from Uganda to be with us here. And those who joined us virtually from outside the country, we thank them. And those who have been here in the panel here, we thank them. Also those who have given keynote speeches here. Now, from what they have all said, you can say that it is like the 7 people who went to find out, those blind people who went to find out what an elephant looks like. From what they all said, actually a picture has emerged of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. As a family, we thank everybody for sparing their time to come and be here today. This event would have been held 3 years ago, but because of the COVID, we decided to postpone it. And today was so important because this is the 30th anniversary of Jaramogi, why we decided that it must be held here today. Jaramogi was very many things, a very versatile character, very engaging when you want to talk to him, but very simple. It was very, very simple. We remember when we were growing up here in this town, Jaramogi just used to wear kinyasa and a color shoes. That was his standard dress in town. That's how he was known. And that is how he even went up to Legico. You will see, if you read the Note of Uhuru, there is a place where they were now discussing the dress, Jaramogi's dress in Bunge, how he should get into Bunge. Eventually he won that and was able to be going to Bunge without having to put up a tie. So, but we're growing up as children, he had been a teacher. And therefore, he was very, very strict with us as children. He wanted us to grow up like any other native children around. And we had it very rough, me and Oburu here, as children. But now, in retrospect, we are grateful to him that by treating us like ordinary people, we grew up as true Kenyans, and we therefore understood the problems the ordinary peasant children were experiencing in the rural areas. We were removed from schools here in Kisumu and taken back to a rural school down there. We lost 2 years of our education because of transfer from Kisumu to the rural home there. Because when we went there, they said we were too small to go to standard 3. So we had to go and start again in standard 1. But that was okay for us. We think that it was a good experience. It prepared us for life in the future. But Jaramogi, this other aspect of Jaramogi which has not been properly appreciated. Jaramogi the teacher. Jaramogi really wanted people to get education. And he spent a lot of his time and a lot of his money trying to promote education among the Kenyans. At the time he died, there were 54 children in different stages of education. Some were in nursery, primary, secondary, and university, whom he was sponsoring. We decided as a family to ensure that all those children would get education in accordance with their abilities. And through the foundation, we raised money and we ensured that all the 54 children Jaramogi was sponsoring got education. It was a time when there was nothing like CDF. But we managed to ensure that these children got education. Some we sent abroad to universities in honor of Jaramogi. But he had started this thing much earlier. When he resigned from teaching in Maseno and came and set up a business here, he was helping very many students who wanted to go abroad. And when he now became the chairman of the K-Robo Luo Union, he now actually institutionalized it. Very many students who went abroad in those days got support from Luo Union. And when he went on a trip, he had been invited to go to India. What happened is Jaramogi had constructed a building in the center of the town here. He called it Ramogi House. And that building was completed in 1951. So in 1952, he invited the governor. He wrote a letter to the governor through the PC to come and officially launch or open the building. The reply came back that the town center is not for Africans, natives. That Africans should go and build in the native reserves. The town center is only for Europeans and Asians. So that is noted to Uhuru. You can read it there. So after that rejection, he now wrote to the Indian High Commission. By that time, India had attained independence and had posted a High Commissioner here in Nairobi who was representing the whole of Eastern Africa. It was called Sir Apa Sahib Pant. So Apa Sahib Pant accepted the invitation to come. So he came here to Kisumu to open the building. And when he looked at the building, he was so impressed. A colonial operation can put up a building like this. He invited Jaramogi to go to India to see how Indians are working to reconstruct their country after independence. And that is how in India, traveled the length and the breadth of India, met so many people, the Minister of Education, the Minister for Culture, the Minister for Industries. He toured from Bombay to Delhi, to Bangalore, to Chennai, to Calcutta, to Srinagar, all part of India. Some by train, by road, by air. He wrote a book. It was called Dueche Areo e India. 2 months in India. He recorded everything that he had seen in India. That book was later on translated by an Indian friend of him, Ambubai Patel, into English. And the copies are available there. You can buy them. Huru is also available there. Flames of Freedom is also available there. Anybody who wants can buy. So impressed. He met with the then Indian Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru. And they had long discussions. And he signed an agreement there with the Indian government that he could send Kenyan students to go and study in India. So long as they get transport to go to India, they would get Indian government scholarship to study for free in Indian university. We then came here and recruited Kenyans to go and study in India. He opened an office in that building called Jivan Bharat building where the Indian High Commission was, and put a Kenyan who had come from India at that time called Olwande Kodul as the secretary. To that scholarship program, from 1953, Odongo Mambo, Omolo Kero, Tomo Kelo Dongo, Odero Joey, Akoko Mboya, Mauro Keo, and out there, Joe Karanja, who became the first High Commissioner in London, Vice Chancellor of University of Nairobi, and Vice President. Henry Waridi, the first Member of Parliament for Mukurweini. Kalembe Ndile was an MP for Omoto. Here he was working at SM Utieno. All those were students who Jaramogi sent to study in India. This is long before airlift. So the package was much earlier than the airlift. And the airlift only traveled to the Eastern European countries. First, Jaramogi had gone on to attend a conference in Tokyo, Japan, a World Peace Conference. When he was at that conference in Tokyo, he met with the Chinese delegation. The Chinese delegation invited him to go and visit China. That is how Jaramogi went to the East. First to Shanghai. From Shanghai, they went to Peking, those days, now Beijing. And he met with, and they had discussions, and they arranged for him to go to other parts of China to go and see how China were working to develop their country, Chinese. He went. From there, they arranged for him to go. The Chinese and the Russians had not disagreed. So they're the ones who made arrangement for him to go and meet with Nikita Khrushchev, then the president of the Soviet Union in Moscow. So he went from Peking to Moscow and had discussions with the leadership of Soviet Union. First, in Beijing, they agreed to support. In Moscow also, they agreed to support the liberation movement in Kenya. From Moscow, he flew to London. At Heathrow Airport, the immigration saw the stamp of Peking. They did not mind about Moscow, but Peking, the Red China. So he went to China, yes. You know, he was holding a British passport. At that time, everybody was a British subject. And the British subject, the guy just did not say anything, but noted and I think reported to the immigration. He went into the town. But from there, when he came back to Nairobi and landed at Jomo Kenyatta Airport now, then Embakasi Airport, the passport was impounded. They took away the passport. They did not give any reasons. So there was a headline, Jaramogi's passport impounded. And there was a long debate over it. The majority of members of parliament at that time were Jaramogi was playing about with fire. One was called Group Captain Briggs. One was Sir Michael Blundell. And one was called Ines Vasi. And all of them were condemning Jaramogi and saying that Jaramogi was playing with. He who rode on the back of the tiger ended inside the stomach of the tiger. So one said, Mr. D, that man and he will fail. So when Jaramogi rose to respond, he told the gentlemen who were talking that, look, even me, before I went to people about China. But what I saw, China is the country with the biggest population in the world. At that time, 540 million people. But in China, I did not see any people walking naked. Everyone was clothed. In China, I did not see people. In China, I did not. China was able to feed 540 million people. We have no beggars in China. So if that is what's communism, then communism is food. It's like food. That's what Jaramogi said. You can see it in the Hansard. Tomorrow, headline East African Standards. Communism, my food, says Odinga. And the tag of being a communist. Jaramogi never studied Marxism-Leninism at all. Jaramogi was just being realistic at that time. Now what he did, he negotiated scholarships with those countries for Kenyans. At that time, it was not easy to get a passport if you are going to study in those countries. So the Kenyans who had moved out and had been denied opportunity by foot through Uganda and through South Sudan to Khartoum, negotiated and opened an office in Khartoum, and then went also. Jaramogi met them, and through that, and he was able to meet the Egyptian president, Mr. Nasser. But I wanted to tell you that when his passport was impounded here, he got a passport, international passport from Kwame Abdel Nasser. 2 international passports. Set up an office operated by the late William Odhiambo Kelo. Then they opened up another office in London, operated by Otiego Thiel. In London, Nkrumah bought a building called Africa Unity House. Building he dedicated to the liberation struggle on Africa. And all Africans who had a problem in London could go and stay in that building. And he asked Jaramogi to give him somebody to manage that building. Jaramogi gave him a Kenyan who had been a student in London and had not come back, called Otiego Thiel. Became the manager of Africa Unity House. So now the Cairo office was the one that was liaising with all these countries: Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Romania, the Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, and China and so on, about scholarships. So Kenyans only needed to get to Cairo. From Cairo, you now be able to travel to get a scholarship to study for free in all those countries. Through that program, there were 5,000 Kenyans managed to study in the university. That was Jaramogi's initiative, which has never been recognized or appreciated, because people highlight only the 300 or so people who were taken by airlift and from Mbagazi to New York. But there's nothing, it's a drop in the water of the ocean by comparison to many Kenyans who studied through Jaramogi's initiative. First in India, then in those other countries, then in the UK, in the United States. People like Hilary Ngweno studied in Harvard. It was sponsored by Jaramogi. Washington Jalango Kumu was sponsored by Jaramogi to go and study in Harvard. Jaramogi sent very many students to the United States also, and also to other West African countries, Ghana, Egypt, and so on and so forth. This is an aspect of Jaramogi's contribution that has never been appreciated, and I wanted this to also go on record. Jaramogi as an educator. So therefore, I really want to thank you all for coming to help us remember Jaramogi. Asanteni sana. Mungu awabariki.